It is my most important pleasure to welcome Philipp Offenberg, Director Europe at Breakthrough Energy, who will take the lead for this session, Ministerial Fireside Chat.
Thank you very much, Francois, and good to see you all. First of all, big congratulations to the new leadership of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. Fantastic. We're very much looking forward to working with you. As someone who's been there from the beginning, since 4 years, also big congratulations and kudos to Francois Paquet, who has been leading the Secretariat for all this time and has made the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition what it is today. So a big thank you. Welcome now to the afternoon session, which is titled The Future of the European Green Deal, Making Europe Competitive and Resilient. So now we actually know already what the future of the European Green Deal will be. It's called the Clean Industrial Deal, and it's supposed to be delivered in the first 100 days of this mandate. We're not yet sure, is the time already ticking? Is it 100 days from von der Leyen election, or is it 100 days from the college being completed? In any case, I think it's quite a short time to put together something meaningful. And let me start just by a comment here. The new Clean Industrial Deal can certainly not be another half-hearted effort. As we've seen with the Green Deal Industrial Plan, those who remember that document from last year, or even the Net Zero Industry Act, I think both of these documents were not up to the challenge that we're seeing today, that Europe is facing today, and Francois has pointed that out very well in his beginning. The expectations for this Clean Industrial Deal that is now coming are very high. The urgency is high. The benchmark really must be the Made in China 2025 or the Inflation Reduction Act, or whatever will be left of it. We don't know yet after this week. But these are actually the benchmark documents for the ambition that the Clean Industrial Deal now needs to have. At Breakthrough Energy, we say that Europe is really in a scale or fail moment. We see that our incumbent industries are struggling. Some of them are deindustrializing, and it's strongly driven by the corrosive effects of high energy prices that we see in Europe. And we can talk about chemicals, we can talk about steel. On the other side of the coin, there's all this emerging clean tech in Europe that Europe is developing, and we have many promising companies. But unfortunately, we see project after project getting cancelled. And that's why, for the beginning of this new political term, we've started what we call a reality check series, and some of this will be launched soon, because we do believe that any future policy making really needs to be grounded in the reality on the ground and the reality of the projects that we have in Europe. And I think we will also certainly look into the 2 gigawatts of FIDs that were mentioned earlier today and check if that's actually adequate or accurate. But in any case, what we see in hydrogen so far is a mixed picture. So there are some clear successes. There are refineries where we have several renewable hydrogen projects that have reached a final investment decision. Then we see other end-use sectors such as e-fuels for shipping or sustainable aviation fuels, where progress has been much, much slower. And that signals to us that the ambition is there, but that the support structures that we need are not yet all in place. So I'm excited to discuss how we can turn this ambition into action. And who better to discuss this with than some of the front runners in Europe, because I would say Portugal is a front runner in Europe in renewable hydrogen. So please welcome on stage, first of all, Maria João Pereira, the Secretary of State for Energy of Portugal. Welcome. And then Ana Quelhas, the Chief Hydrogen Officer at EDP, and of course now co-chair of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. Welcome. You sit in the middle. Good. Thank you for joining. Secretary Pereira, so we've seen that fossil fuels have sparked a supply crisis, an energy economic crisis following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Europe can not really rely on others very heavily in this world, and we've seen another election this week that we might interpret as a troublesome signal for the future. At the same time, we have renewables that bring affordable and secure energy and more resilience. So how is Portugal accelerating the deployment of renewable energies to increase energy security, resilience, and make it better prepared for shocks.
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It's also an honor to share with all of you our thoughts about this. I think there are several. Well, Portugal has been on a track road to renewables for set up a strategy a long time ago. So it's not something new. We've been doing quite well compared with other countries. Of course, we have a lot of potential, and this helps, especially on wind and solar. We also have some hydropower, but the policies are important. And recently, we revised the NECP, so the targets need to be there, the ambition needs to be there, and we have now moved on to more ambitious targets. This gives a signal to the market and to the promoters. Of course, when I talk with promoters, they are concerned about the demand for the energy. They are looking forward. So when we talk about promoters or companies that want to install renewables in Portugal, they are afraid of not having the offtake for this electricity. On the other side, we see that hydrogen projects are looking for this renewable energy and saying that maybe it's not there. So we need to move forward in both tracks. So the government has set ambitious targets for solar, for wind, for new technology like offshore wind, floating offshore wind, and also for storage capacity, and this is important. But other things are needed, like we are in the process of streamlining the permitting of renewables, so make it more clear, transparent, and simple regulatory framework. This is essential to move forward. Better engaging also stakeholders and communities, because we already start seeing some opposition to new projects, so this is also something that is of concern and that we need to take care. We also need to expand grids, otherwise we will be limited by the grid, so we may need to, we need also to have financial support for grids, otherwise this will have a heavy cost on the price of the cost of energy, so there's another issue that we are concerned and that we are trying to track. Grids must be more efficient, more intelligent, to provide, to be there for the renewables to be installed. And this is also something that the planning of the grids is very, very important. And also, we think that depending on the technologies, we still need to have some financial support to de-risk the projects, because there is still some uncertainty of new technology like floating offshore or other offshore technologies, and also because of the volatility of the prices. We have been seeing a lot of volatility on the prices, and it may hinder the investors to put the projects on the field. So this is where we are. We are trying to push the market and give a stable framework and stable environment for the renewables, and I think this is the most important thing. So concerning renewables, I will leave it like that.
Thank you. Anna, can you comment on that as an energy supplier?
Yeah, well, I don't envy your job.
It's
really a tough job. I mean, but plenty of room for improvements and to really create and add value to the industry and the entire sector. I mean, we have in Portugal, we're likely enough and fortunate to have good renewable resources, a solid hydro basis in the generation portfolio, and good sun and wind, and the combination of the two is really critical, together with the pumped storage, to be able to fully decarbonize our power sector. And we're going, I think, very well on track along those lines. The targets that were just mentioned for 2030 are very aggressive, very aggressive. We're talking about doubling our wind installed capacity and multiplying by 5 our solar installed capacity in Portugal. So even for myself, that I've been in the sector for many, many years, it's very difficult to understand how we're going to be able to deliver that. The targets are very aggressive. It's pretty much like we're all familiar in the hydrogen sector. Of course, it's good to have very ambitious targets. It sets the direction. But if we don't see a path to accomplish them, if we don't see a route, then it's easy to start question how we're going to be able to deliver, in the next 5 or 6 years, multiply by 5 everything that I've been doing in the past for solar or doubling wind. It's difficult to see how we're going to be able to deliver that. And when it comes to hydrogen, actually the renewables to supply hydrogen are oftentimes the major bottleneck. Of course, demand is always there as a bottleneck, so we can always talk about that. But when it comes to delivering the projects, and for the scale that we need, getting the renewables, it's very difficult. Very difficult. And it's not a question, it's not about Portugal. It's generally true in all markets. It's difficult to deliver the renewables, the massive amount of renewables that we need for direct electrification first, and to supply renewable hydrogen. So I don't see a lack of demand for renewable power. I see a lack of demand for renewable hydrogen, clearly. So then, again, with the transposition of the Renewable Energy Directive, I think there's a very concrete opportunity for member states to have a word there and actually be able to tell everybody what does it mean to have a 42% binding target for 2030, because no one really knows what that means. So, and the industry is really anxiously waiting for that clarity and that answer to be able to commit. Ourselves, as a renewable hydrogen developer, we've been advancing our projects the most that we can. I mean, securing funding, very successful in securing public funding, securing the grid connection, which, again, we can talk about that. It's a major bottleneck, but securing grid connection, even for the largest projects that we have, securing environmental licensing, which takes several months, sometimes years, and the renewables. In Portugal, the same happens in Spain, for example, but in other markets. Apart from repowering and hybridizing projects, there's no visibility on the availability of grid connection. So in mature markets, like our market in renewables, it's very mature. Hybridizing, which we're doing, I mean, we at EDP, we have hybrids of wind together with solar, of hydro together with solar, but that's a limited opportunity. And it's, of course, not at the massive scale that it's required.
Yeah. Maybe quickly on the grid connections, I mean, that's a problem that we see in many countries. Does anyone of you have a number? How big is the backlog of renewables that are not being connected, or how high is curtailment in Portugal at the moment?
Well, we are now evaluating this issue. We're trying to make there are a lot of projects that did not. We have an experience of several years of making auctions, which take time then. So there was also some speculation around these auctions. So we are trying now to evaluate what's on track, what will not be actually get into the it's not going to be delivered, and hopefully we will have new capacity next year. So we also need to use better our grids. We are trying to make like conditional access to grids, things like that will allow more connections to be accomplished. So we are, I don't have a figure to give it to you, unfortunately, but we are aware of the situation, of the condition, and we are looking for solutions to get to the renewables to be delivered on real.
If I may, I can give a concrete example, so you can have an understanding of how big the issue is. For example, in Portugal, there's a region called Sines, where we have one hydrogen project, 100 megawatt, very well advanced project, but other developers also have hydrogen projects and other projects, ammonia projects, steel making, data centers. Everybody wants to go to Sines because, in fact, it's a very good, it combines a lot of good infrastructure. It's near Deepwater Port, it has the rail and the highways, so it's very well positioned for a lot of important demand, electricity demand, not just hydrogen, okay? So the TSO had received requests to connect for demand that doubled or more than doubled the peak demand of the country. Okay? So how to go about it? How to answer? Because even the TSO does not have the procedures to respond to this demand, because the traditional procedure is first come, first serve.
First come, first serve, yeah.
But they know clearly if they apply first come, first serve, they will jeopardize and compromise serious development, because most likely the first come was speculating or high risk and maybe the project will never materialize, right? So the government defined this as
a strategy, yeah. We have what we call areas of high demand. So the first one was Sines, that was like a kind of open season where promoters were invited to express their needs. And we are now studying other areas in the country, other regions of the country, for opening other high demand regions for capacity. But this is for consumption.
For consumption,
Yeah,
we're
it's a
talking
clever
about
approach,
consumption,
because
yeah.
we see this issue in many, many countries. And
because
I think so far no one has presented a convincing solution.
Yeah, the economy asks me, where can I find 2 gigawatts to connect? And I say, nowhere. It's impossible. So it's something that needs to be...
In Spain, for example, at the end, quite recently, they also defined a new procedure for getting access to the grid that actually entails the payment of warranties. So it's a strong commitment. If you really ask, if you want to ask, you have to advance with warranties that, of course, will compromise you, of course.
Yeah, but still it's a way to distinguish a real project from a PowerPoint project. But still, I mean, despite these issues that others also face, you clearly are, Secretary, in a comfortable position. Portugal can certainly produce more electricity and probably also more renewable hydrogen than it can take itself. You could become a major hub for energy. What are the steps that you're taking to turn that into reality?
Okay, so first of all, we need we started a policy for green hydrogen a few years ago, so it's not something also new. We have already projects that entered FID in Portugal, in the refinery, for instance, and this is the result of a policy that is in place. So several things are on the pipeline. We have already promoted this, and we need to have some grids. We need to have some infrastructure. So we have projects for new infrastructure for transporting the hydrogen. We have applied for together with Spain and with France for making the connections through Europe. So this will be the hydrogen that will possibly be exported. So this is a need. Otherwise, okay, we have to think about two different approaches and two simultaneous approaches. First of all, we think this is an opportunity for Portugal to become a green reindustrialization. So we have our own industry. We have the potential for renewables. We have the conditions. We have a stable framework, And this is an opportunity for our electricity, our renewables, to have green production for our own industries. And we have cement, we have refinery, we have several difficult to abate industry, and also to bring more industry to our country. And for becoming an exporter, we need to have extra hydrogen for this and extra renewables, of course, and we need to have the way to export it. And that is not so easy. We have derivatives, we have also projects on SAF, ammonia, methane, and we have the possibility of exporting through the new pipeline that's being that have received now recently some funding for the studies through the CEF, through the CEF mechanism, and they are applying now, the companies, the TSOs of Spain and Portugal and France, I believe, for starting this project on this pipeline. So this will be a major aspect for becoming this hub and to become an exporter.
And then, can I ask, so you'll build a lot of things. You'll build renewables, you'll build electrolyzers, you'll build pipelines. How do you ensure that some of the value added will end up in Europe?
Well, I think we need this for
the manufacturing, I'm asking. So where do you buy these technologies?
Well, we don't have any. Currently there has been not any policy for restricting the companies that are developing these projects, and these are very difficult projects in terms of cost. So so they are in the market. So we have not yet instate a policy, but if, of course, we hear the president saying that in the next bank, hydrogen bank, there will be this restriction, or there will be this criteria for value this kind of issue. That will be a this needs to be supported. Otherwise, the market will speak for itself. So I don't see. So if you want to promote our own industry, we need to have policies that will make this happen. If our technology is more expensive than the others, then the market will.
So you will not. You will be a policy taker in a way in Portugal. You're not gonna push for these kind of measures.
Well, well, this is a difficult question for
Yes, that's why I'm asking it.
Well, I think we need to think about it. Yeah. We cannot put our companies in difficulties. Yeah. Okay, so we need to think about the effects that we will also cause on the costs. Mm-hmm. So this needs to be beneficial for all. Yeah. So we need to think very thoughtful about this.
It's a difficult question for sure. That's why there's no solution. Very Unfortunately, we will not have audience questions, but I see that is a hard question that people want to talk about. But let's stay on the issue of costs and competitiveness for a second, Anna. It's true. I mean, renewable hydrogen isn't cheap. What are ways to reduce the cost? Also thinking of EU policies. I mean, we had your predecessors as co-chairs were talking about the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition's main ask, which included stacking of subsidies, improvements to the hydrogen bank. What are your thoughts? What are ways to push down the costs for renewable hydrogen?
Yeah, I think there's no silver bullet. So we really need a comprehensive set of policies and regulatory framework to align the incentives and make sure that we're able to kickstart the economy, make it grow, learn, and ultimately become competitive by itself. I mean, many have drawn a parallel with renewables, but again, I think it's a very good parallel. We can do it all over again. In renewables 25 years ago, it was recognized that we needed renewables in the power system, but it was very, very expensive at the time. So if there was no, mechanisms pushing and supporting, including public funding available for renewables, they would have never penetrated the market. And today, no one will choose a technology to produce electricity, a new technology that is anything but renewables, even without, the tariffs or the mechanisms that we had in the past. Right, so I think it's pretty much the same for renewable hydrogen. There is no renewable hydrogen market simply because we cannot compete against the alternatives. And really to understand the gap, the cost competitiveness gap, you have to go all the way up to the final utilization of the hydrogen. So it's much more complex than with the power system. In the power system, you're just comparing with the wholesale market, which is a price discovery mechanism, very transparent. With hydrogen, you have to go all the way, even if you're replacing hydrogen by hydrogen, no one really knows because everything's captive, so that there's no trading, there's no public price discovery for the hydrogen. But like I said, most of the applications maybe will not replace hydrogen plug and play, will replace diesel or gasoline or gas or coal, depending on the final use. So really, the policy needs to understand that not all uses make sense, not all uses have the same value, so we need really to prioritize the ones that make sense, design the policies accordingly, and this has been, if you look at the entire value chain, the demand has been, the weakest link because also we have very weak policy tools targeting the demand. Yep. Up to now, we have been focused on the production side of it. So we have been designing funding mechanisms to support CapEx and more recently OpEx. So everything began with supporting CapEx and by definition with instruments that would not be able to close the funding gap. So by definition, most of the recovery and resilience fund mechanisms that national member states designed, or even the Innovation Fund and the IPSA, they were designed to support up to 40%, maybe 50% of the CapEx, which by design is not enough, right? So you need to complement that with support on OpEx, which is the chunk here of the costs. And the Hydrogen Bank is a way to do that, and it will, of course, help if you can stuck with other mechanisms. The demand side doesn't have a lot of mechanisms by itself to be incentivized. So we also need to, like I said, prioritize the applications and targetedly support those that make sense. Support refurbishing equipment or because some applications, like I said, it's not plug and play. So you need to make investments on the demand side as well. So you need that, and then the infrastructures. I am a full believer that in the beginning, the market will start in a decentralized form. Decentralized doesn't mean small scale, but putting together the production and the consumption. But longer term, we have a potential to trade, even international trade and cross-Atlantic trade of hydrogen and derivatives. So the infrastructure needs to also be supported. Of course, everything here needs to be done in a coherent way. And we, in Europe, we have a tremendous complexity of instruments at national level, at European level. For a developer like us that is present in pretty much every market, it's a heavy cost just to be on top of the regulatory framework in each of the markets and the policy mechanisms. And so there's no really level playing field, and the competitiveness between different member states really depends on the instruments that are designed and the framework in place. Yep. So having coordinated policies, and there's plenty of room for member states to work there, coordinated policies when it comes to supporting policies for creating the hydrogen market, it's critical, and do everything in a just and fair way. It's also difficult, but we cannot forget that potentially some of the tools that we design may have cross-subsidization and impacts that are not sustainable in the long term. So some of the measures maybe should be limited in time. So having this long-term and holistic view, it's critical, and it's very, very difficult to implement right and sound policies, but we have ideas.
And that's the big job now for Teresa Ribera, because a lot of it is state aid. And as someone who's worked at the Commission, this is a major rethink that needs to happen there towards more holistic approach and system thinking.
I totally agree with Anna in what she said. I think that this is a very complex issue, and again, and with multiple different dimensions. And we tend to complicate everything. This is already complicated. We tend to complicate it even more. And I agree with Anna that there is also the need to work on the part of demand, because otherwise we need also to have policies for demand. I think that the delegated acts that are coming out now will help, but we need to be careful of how it will really work and be able to change if we see that the effects are not the ones that we expected, and that we are not doing the opposite or trying to take good measures that sometimes have the opposite effect and hinders what we want to do, that is to have renewable hydrogen. So they can be very powerful, very how to say, they can be a good policy instruments on the side of demand, but they also can have side effects that sometimes they are not what it is expected. And because we are learning, we have a learning curve here, we need to be able to see and to correct the trajectory to be able to reach what we want, to have renewable hydrogen.
Yeah. One approach to simplify is the auction as a service that the European Hydrogen Bank is offering. Is that something you're looking into for Portugal to participate in or to use as a tool?
Yeah, we've been using that as a tool. I think that Portugal was very successful. You are talking about the auction, the bank.
Yeah,
hydrogen.
the auction as a service where you can top up with national funding.
Yeah, I think that Portugal was quite successful in the first round. It was we have a good.
I think that's a misunderstanding. With the ability of member states to run their own auctions through the European Hydrogen Bank, the auction as a service option. Is that something that you think that Portugal should do in the future?
Yeah, we just did an auction in Portugal, not using the bank instrument, but we did our own auction, smaller, of course, but we are now, it's now on the, in the first, it's actually still on running, it's not yet completed, but we put some funding from our environmental fund to push to fund some OPEX. So for 140 million euros over the next 10 years. It's a small quantity, but it's a kind of push to allow for injection in our natural gas grid. So it's the first one, and will at least. The idea is to trigger to make possible for producers to inject on the natural gas grid while we are building the infrastructure and while we don't have yet the demand for there. So this is a start.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. So one last question, if I can, François, or okay. Portugal is a front runner, Anna. There are others in the world that are doing renewable hydrogen. What can we learn from others?
Well, typically the question is the other way around.
What can they learn from Portugal?
What can they learn from us? Because Europe is really, it was the leader, at least if we draw a timeline, Europe if we take out Japan, maybe Europe was the first one started designing targets and then policy instruments. I think maybe what we can say about other markets, for example, if we look at the U.S. market now, let's see what's going on, what's going to be delivered. But the IRA and the PTC that was defined through the IRA, I think maybe that was an inspiration for the design of the hydrogen bank in Europe, because before we only had instruments targeting the capex, right, and the PTC at least in theory, is a very, very powerful mechanism because it's a 10-year up to $3 per kilogram. So you're not dependent on calendar of auctions or on winning and being competitive. No, you're just depending on yourself and being able to deliver competitive projects, and you do the math and if you can capture or not the fiscal tool. So, and of course, for Europe, we don't have an European fiscal tool, so we cannot implement such instrument. And I also recognize the benefits of having a competitive rather than a fiscal tool. But of course, the fiscal mechanism, and with this amount, this length of 10 years OPEX, it's very powerful. So it's a very powerful, very simple mechanism. Other markets, I mean, for example, the Brazilian market, where we're also very active and present, where we already have an operating renewable hydrogen project, has a tremendous advantage, which is the power sector in itself. It's almost fully decarbonized. So the entire country is above 80%. Some of the sub-markets, power sub-markets, are above 90%. So it's just connecting your electrolyzer to the grid, and you're producing renewable hydrogen. So I think Portugal, in that sense, in the European context, is well advanced and on track to reach that level, much better position than the majority of the European countries. So that's, of course, something that works as an advantage for a country like Brazil.
Yeah, no hourly matching discussions and other things. Okay, thank you both very much. It's very exciting to see what is happening in Portugal. Really, really good that we have such front runners in Europe. And I thank you very much for participating, and ask everyone to give a warm round of applause to our Portuguese panel.